Chapter 9. We took 2 boats to the new island, both filled with 5 people each. Anila and I rowed in the first boat, which was rowed into the inlet between 2 high rock walls. When we reached land, a couple of the soldiers got out and pulled the boat the rest of the way. After that, we had no idea what to do. We didn't have to wait long, though. The rest of the birds showed up. We were all wearing our protective suits and helmets, but I was still scared. The birds circled over us and then flew farther inland. We followed. The island was mostly one big hill in the center. We walked up the hill, through shoulder-high grass that had large black beetles. When we got to the top, a large dark gray monolith greeted us. It looked like a large door, 20 feet tall. There was no knob, and I wasn't sure what was holding it up. The birds flew high above it. "I think this is the place," I said. Anila walked to the other side of the door. "There's nothing behind it." She studied the ground from where the things stuck out. "I think this goes deep underground, whatever it is." The ground was sand, a little darker than the shore. I kicked some up with my foot and regretted it. The smell that came up was awful. Smells like sewage. Anila looked at me for a second before going back to the door. Her soldiers got closer to her, keeping their eyes on the birds. "There's got to be a way to open this," she said, frustrated. I suddenly remembered the crystal. I told Anila, and she nodded to one of the soldiers. He'd been carrying it in a protective case. He set the case down and pulled out the crystal, carrying it to his queen. Anila walked up to the door, the crystal in her hands. Something appeared in the rock to the right of her. It was some kind of indention, about the size of the crystal itself. Anila looked back at us one more time before placing the crystal inside. The ground trembled, kicking up more dark sand. The smell got much worse. The whole island felt like it was having an earthquake. Anila backed away from the door just as an opening appeared from the bottom and worked its way up. The crystal was still there, in the indention next to this opening. Beyond the opening was total darkness. I walked up to it and saw a single step just inside. "I think there's a staircase here." None of us had flashlights, so Anila stepped forward into the darkness. She took the first step, and then carefully placed her foot into the black. Her foot touched something, because she smiled at me and said, "You're right." A soldier started to reach for the crystal to take with us, I assumed, but Anila stopped him. "The door might close if you do that. Leave a few soldiers here to watch over it until we return, Commander." "Yes, my queen." He ordered 2 soldiers to stay outside while he and the other 5 went with us. As soon as we entered, torches lit up the walls on both sides of the stairs. We saw bottomless pits on either side of us, and that the wide staircase led down quite a ways before ending at a large wooden door. 2 soldiers walked behind him and in front of Anila, with one next to her and 2 behind us. Despite all this protection, I still didn't feel safe. After a minute of careful walking, we reached the bottom. The commander studied the door, looking for some way to open it. "Perhaps we need the crystal again," he guessed. "No, Commander Reese," Anila said, walking up next to him. "Look at these markings on the door. They're ancient Dargonian." I hadn't noticed the markings until she mentioned them. They were dark red slashes and symbols. "Can you read that?" I asked her. "Just barely." I learned in school when I was a little girl. Ever since Rockney came, he managed to ease us away from our way of life, our traditions." She lightly touched the markings, whispering to herself. Finally, she said, "Release me to undo the dark dream." As soon as she said the words, they disappeared from the door. Before anyone could say anything, the door popped open, scaring us all. Commander Reese pushed it open the rest of the way. Inside was a large circular room lit by more torches. In the center of the pool was a clear rectangle at least 8 feet tall, and inside the rectangle was a skeleton, hunched against the glass.